for coming today. This is possibly the most important patriotic holiday that we have all year because of the sacrifice. We have Veterans Day, where we thank veterans and service members for their service, which is appropriate on any day, but this is a very distinguished day. So, on behalf of myself personally, and also on behalf of Wounded Warrior Project, I thank you for allowing us to be here. It's an honor. Traveling around the country and talking to various groups of people about Wounded Warrior Project and sharing parts of my story, I've begun to get used to having to change things up from time to time, because particular events and particular groups sometimes do that to me. And the magnitude of the holiday here and John's speech just had a profound effect on me. That was a really strong speech. It really is quite fitting to what I already wanted to say, because I don't know how many of you actually caught it, but on behalf of the representative that he works for, he made a very, very, very strong political statement for our war strategy that's happening right now, about calling for proper air support to make sure that those who are sent out on missions today, in theater today, are successful, not only in capturing and killing the enemy, but in coming back home alive. And the reason why that's relevant to us here specifically is because of an individual that's mentioned here in this brochure that was passed down, Jason Vaughn. He's a Navy SEAL who died as part of SEAL Team 6. And his parents are also mentioned in here, so I understand that they're local. They live here locally, or close to it. A friend of mine also died on that same day, on the same CH-47, in that province in Afghanistan. And I was going to talk about him anyway. And his name is Dan Zerbe. See, when I met Dan, I was already a seasoned soldier. I'd already been in the Army for a number of years, a fully qualified Special Forces soldier. And after 9/11 happened, I wanted to be part of search and rescue, so I went back through training again. And I was starting all over in the Air Force. And Dan was a kid. He was a young, happy-go-lucky kid, right out of high school, 18 years old. He was the kind of kid that was so positive, with such an indomitable spirit, that no matter what the instructors threw at us, he was always smiling. He always made light of what was going on. And in that way, in a mental way, he carried the team together to make sure that we were successful if we wanted to be. He was an integral part of our team. And that was a strong part of his character that he wasn't even fully aware of yet. So after training, we were assigned together at Moody Air Force Base in Valdosta, Georgia. And after a short while there, I went back to the Army so that I could be on the ground and integrate and work with local populations. That was where my passion was. And Dan went on to a special tactics unit so that he could work with Delta Force and SEAL Team 6. And that's where he gave his life. But between that time, we bumped into each other again in training. It was just a couple of years later, and not too long before his death. And he wasn't a kid anymore. He was still happy-go-lucky, but now he was a man. His character had been forged under fire. But him and I were medics. And he had the fortitude to be able to act in compassion, as well as being a warrior, which is what helped me to realize what I am as well. And so while we were in this 2-week training program together to refresh our medical skills, and there's conversations going on in between training, during breaks and whatnot, and Dan would talk to other guys about, this firefight or, that deployment, and, he'd been back and forth so many times, it was countless. And I could see how it weighed down on his face, but he still had that indomitable spirit inside that he wasn't going to let die. And the conversations that him and I had were conversations about protecting women and children. That's the kind of guy that Dan was. In the middle of an operation, he would find the women and the kids and pull them off to the side to make sure that they didn't get caught in the line of fire. That means he was putting himself in the line of fire. And so it was a short time after that, when I got into recovery myself. I'd separated from the military mostly, and I had to deal with PTSD and I had to deal with the fact that I was self-medicating with alcohol. And I was on the internet just a couple of days after August 6, 2011, and I saw his name came up, and I had to go and get in the water, because that's where Dan and I bonded as pararescuemen, as trainees, and also as pararescuemen in the unit that we got assigned to afterwards together. And it was one of those moments where I looked up at my Creator and I said, why Dan? Why does it always have to be the good guy? And I know there's a lot of veterans here, and there's a lot of wars that are represented right now. And when I say that, I'm sure somebody, even a vague face or a very distinct name, just came to your mind. So you know what I'm talking about. But here's the charge. The charge is, when I realized at that moment, sitting in that pool, looking up at the sky, asking why, I realized it wasn't up for me to really know why. What was important was that I now have to live as best as I possibly can. I know that Dan made a difference for a lot of people while he was alive, but I had to bring me. I was about to start yelling. I could do that. So I had to bring meaning to Dan's death. I had to do it for myself, and every opportunity that I get, I honor him. And this is the perfect opportunity. And so for those of us that are veterans right now, I'm passing the charge along. For those that we knew, it's up to us to live as best we possibly can. And so for me, and part of my mission in raising awareness for post-traumatic stress disorder, which I feel a little awkward talking about today because this is the day we honor the dead. But that's how I'm tying it in. And it's real and it's authentic. And I know that there's a lot of stigma that goes with that. We get conditioned in the military to say that we don't, it's a weakness or whatever. But I don't really care about that. I don't care if you want to rip the label off. If you look at the facts are that men and women of strong character go into the military, sacrifice for our country, go to places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, parts of Yugoslavia, Vietnam, Korea, World War II, and come back and we're different people. So you can call it whatever you want, but the fact is today 20% of us coming back are now ending up in jail, in prison, for aggravated assault, aggravated murder. We're committing suicide at unprecedented rates. Now, as the enemy, we have an enemy to this country still. And that's good news to them. And so we don't just have to die on the battlefield in order for them to promote their morale. When we come back home and do it to ourselves, that's even better. So if you think that the war is over for you, or if you think that you're just a civilian and you don't have anything to do with the conflict against the people who don't like our way of life, well, you're wrong, because there's still people dying back here. And so I think I'm going to keep it short at this point. But I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you guys right now. And